Namaste and very good evening to one and all. Thank you for joining us for this another great session of State Startup Ecosystem Showcase series. And today we are joined by Mr. Mithun from Maharashtra State Innovation Society, who has been playing an impeccable role of building Maharashtra startup ecosystem. Welcome, sir. It's indeed a pleasure to have you with us here today, and we are absolutely thrilled and we are excited that despite of such pressing times and such pressing conditions, you have been kind enough to spare your precious time. And we understand that Maharashtra's startup ecosystem has been playing an indispensable role in combating the pandemic, which the world has never seen before. Today, indeed, has been a very special day for the startup ecosystem of India. Just a very short while back, the Honorable Commerce and Industries Minister Shri Piyush Goyal finally launched the Startup India Seed Fund scheme we all have been waiting for, which the Honorable Prime Minister announced on 16 January 2021 at Praram Startup India International Summit, which was aimed at celebrating 5 years of Startup India initiative. So we are more than happy to have this session today. And in fact, the last week itself, we held the very first meeting of National Startup Advisory Council, which includes esteemed members from Indian startup ecosystem, which will guide us in further expansion of Startup India movement. Needless to say, while the times are tough, we are definitely united as one to take the ecosystem to greater heights and to give much needed push to the backbone of Indian economy. And with this, I'm sure we all agree that the capacity building of the states, UTs, incubators, accelerators, at all will play an important role in further expanding our ecosystem. Therefore, with State Startup Ecosystem Showcase series, we actually envision on developing collaborative capabilities of everybody, and we are providing a one of its kind platform to the state champions to actually demonstrate and present on the good practices of the states for their respective startup ecosystems. And today, with Maharashtra, which has been definitely a fast mover in terms of climbing the ladder of success for expanding the startup ecosystem, we are very delighted to understand on the steps and initiatives being taken by the state. We have been observing the state in taking proactive measures in public private partnerships, in organizing state of the art startup weeks, in organizing reverse pitches, in organizing various public procurement practices, ensuring that the startups are the center stage in the government and in the public service delivery. Now, without much further ado, I would request Mr. Mithun for a brief presentation on the state startup ecosystem. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Chahat. It's a pleasure to be a part of this event, and I would like to thank you for you and the Startup India team for giving us this opportunity to talk to your lovely members about the various initiatives that we have. And like you rightly said, it's a great day indeed for the Indian startup ecosystem, where the Honorable CIM just launched the seed fund that would be disbursed through incubation centers, and it's definitely a step in the right direction, where we can have a fair amount of domestic capital to support early stage startups in India. And with this, I'd like to start the presentation. So if you can just move to the first slide. So Maharashtra State Innovation Society is the nodal agency to support the startup ecosystem in Maharashtra. As a team, we came together somewhere in early 2018, when the government realized that there needs to be a dedicated team to support startups and the ecosystem, to see how we can enable more people to prosper in this ecosystem. And it was because governments across India had by then realized that the whole startup wave is kicking off, and we need a dedicated entity to build and support this ecosystem. So 2018, we came together as a team, a fairly young and diverse team from diverse backgrounds, I would say, and we launched a state startup and innovation policy in Feb 2018. And the policy kind of details the key initiatives that the Innovation Society will work on for the next 5 years, which means 2018 to 2023. So that's the genesis of the State Innovation Society. Over the last 3 years, we have been actively working in the ecosystem, both with various government entities as well as private partners, to see how we can support and have more people or enable more startups to come out of Maharashtra. So most of you are aware, Startup India has a ranking mechanism, and the last time we had this ranking, Maharashtra was placed under the leader category, and the year before that we were under the emerging category. So with a great team that we have, the support of the management, as well as great support that we received from Startup India, we were able to jump our ranking to the leadership, to the leader category, and hopefully this time around we should be able to do better than that. Some tidbits about the ecosystem that we have in Maharashtra is what I would like to cover in the first couple of slides. So Mumbai, like you know, is the financial capital of the country, which means you have a strong BFSI hub, and some of the sectors where we are really strong are fintech, media, health, edutech, and e-commerce. Apart from that, Pune is also an important part of the Maharashtra ecosystem. So Pune is predominantly strong in the automotive and electronics segment. Apart from, it also has a very strong ITES business. Some other areas where we are seeing increasing traction for startups are Nasik, Nagpur, Aurangabad, etc. Currently, as it stands, we have about 25,000 startups that are in the state of Maharashtra as per the Startup India data, and out of which around 8,800 odd are DPIIT registered startups. In terms of, we have a fairly good spread of incubation centers, some of the notable ones being Sign, which was very recently voted as the best incubation center in India, which is at IIT Bombay. We have Venture Center, which is focused on biotechnology based startups. We have Riddle, which is an incubation center that we have funded also at KJ Somaya College. And apart from this, there's one at SIBA, which is at Father Agnell College. And then there's a very good incubation center at SPJN, which is called as SPTBI. In terms of government supported entities to support the ecosystem, I already briefed you about the Maharashtra State Innovation Society, the entity that I am a part of. We also have since Mumbai is a pretty large BFSI hub, we also have a dedicated team in place under the government to support fintech startups. And we are probably one of the few states in India that has a dedicated fintech policy and a team in place just to support fintech. And there are a host of initiatives that they have, and they actively engage with the whole fintech ecosystem, not just the startups, but the large banks, the NBFCs, the NPCI, RBI, so on and so forth, to create a very strong ecosystem for the fintech landscape in Maharashtra. So that's an overview of the ecosystem that we have in Maharashtra. Chad, if you can move to the next slide. In terms of, so this talks about some the investment scenario that we have, both government-backed funds as well as private capital. So we have been fairly lucky that being the financial capital, we have the presence of a good number of venture capitalist investors, angel networks, private equity, HNI investors. Some of the major ones being Bain Capital, Bloom, Avishkar, Orios Ventures, Nexus Venture Partners, Ivy Cap Ventures, so on and so forth. Apart from this, the government of Maharashtra has a host of venture funds. The largest one being the Maharashtra Aerospace and Defense Fund. So, like you can imagine, this is a very niche fund focused only on aerospace and defense. And this fund in total would be a size of about 1,000 crores once it's fully fully the committed funds are raised. Apart from this, we have a SEST fund to back entrepreneurs, which is an 80 crore fund that was launched in 2020. We have what we call the Maharashtra Social Venture Fund, which is a 120 crore fund and has been almost completely deployed as we speak. And apart from all this, the Maharashtra State Innovation Society is also planning to launch a 100 crore seed fund, hopefully later part of this year in 2021, focusing mainly on the early stage ecosystem. Next. So, like I told you, we launched the state startup policy in Feb 2018, and this slide kind of outlines the objectives of the startup policy and also gives you an overview of some of the key mandates that we would be working on as a part of the startup and innovation policy. The ultimate goal of the policy is to have more startups being built out of Maharashtra, see how we can support the ones that are already there, with the ultimate objective being to create more jobs and add to the economic value of the state. Some of the key initiatives are to set up incubation centers across the state. So as we speak, we have about 17 of them, and to have grand challenges to solve problems faced by different government departments. Startup Week, which is our flagship initiative to facilitate increased procurement from various government departments, setting up one of India's earliest virtual incubation center. I already told you we have about 17 physical incubation centers. Apart from that, we also want to set up this virtual incubation center that can support a larger number of startups with minimal physical infrastructure, conducting acceleration programs to support slightly larger startups and being a part of their accelerated growth journey. Apart from all this, we are also trying to see how we can create certain avenues where there could be some direct benefit transfers to early stage startups, especially. So in Feb 2021, which was earlier this year, the Honorable CM had launched an initiative to give grants of up to 2 lakhs for patents and quality testing. And we will look into each of these initiatives in detail as we progress through this presentation. Chad, if you can go to the next slide. This talks about the current scenario of incubation centers. Like I told you, we have 17 incubation centers spread across the state. Between Mumbai and Pune, we just have 4 because when you're the state's nodal agency, you just can't focus on the larger cities where you have majority of these startups. We need to have a holistic view of how the ecosystem is built. So 13 of the incubation centers are outside the 2 largest cities. Our commitment is to give a grant of 5 crores each to each of the incubation centers, which means it's close to a 90 crore project for us over a period of 5 years. So some of the incubation centers are in Nasik, Akola, Aurangabad has got 2, Nagpur has got 2, Sangli, and Lonere. So as you can see, if you can look at the map, it's evenly spread across various parts of the state, so that if there's a youngster somewhere out there who wants to start up, we have then created the right set of physical infrastructure for him to go and get started with his startup. One striking aspect of the incubation grant is that we have mandated that 10% of the 5 crores that we give each of these incubation centers is used as a seed capital into the incubators, and a maximum of 30% of the grants can be used as seed capital for incubate, which means a minimum of 50 lakhs to a maximum of 1.5 crores of the grant which we give to each of these incubation centers can be used as because early stage is where there's a dearth of capital, which is why the seed fund launched by the Government of India and the Startup India team today is of very high relevance. So we have also incorporated a component of seed fund as a part of our incubation center program. The most recent one being SNDT. So in the policy that we are currently looking to update, there's an increased thrust on women entrepreneurship, and as a part of that, we have allocated an incubation center to the SNDT Women's University, which is a women exclusive university, because we felt there needs to be more diversity in the ecosystem, and there is a need to support more women entrepreneurs, to encourage the ones that are already there. So we have sanctioned an incubation center to the SNDT Women's University, which will focus exclusively on early stage women entrepreneurs, and they will also handle a lot of so it would be a hub and spoke model where they will encourage and work closely with colleges across the state to support women entrepreneurs. So that's on the incubation center project. And yeah, just before I finish on that, so as a part of the incubation program, we have two scenarios. One is new incubation centers, which is, I would say, in the majority, where we are supporting or encouraging a lot of new entities to get into incubation. Some of them, like Riddle, for example, already had an incubation center in place, and we are kind of helping them scale up to the next level. So two scenarios when it comes to incubation centers. Next slide, please. Well, this is, I would say, one of our flagship event, and I must say that we have had a fair amount of traction for this over the last 3 years. Maharashtra Startup Week. The idea here is to identify 24 most innovative startups from not just Maharashtra but across India, and give them a government work order. Now, like most of you here know, public procurement across the country has been traditionally a pain point, and more so for startups, given the kind of criteria that exists. But thanks to Startup India, of late there's been a lot of traction through GEM, and a lot of other relaxations that have been bought by the tender in the tendering process. Besides that, it still continues to be a pain point. So we looked around and we saw that there are a lot of startup events that happen, which give prize money or give a grant or give a stuff like that. So we felt the need to differentiate ourselves. So we thought, the way we can have more skin in the game is to give a work order to startups rather than just giving them a cash prize. So which means we identify these 24 startups and we give them a work order from the government of Maharashtra. So like as is displayed on the slide, there are six focus sectors. There's agriculture, healthcare, sustainability, smart infra, governance, education, and skilling. So these are all sectors where the government is a key stakeholder and a very big buyer of products or services. So the underlying theme is, any startup that's got a very strong use case of being able to sell his product or service to the government can be a part of this event. Now, the fundamental idea here is to provide a foot in the door to these 24 startups when it comes to doing business with the government, so that the government can get a feel of the product. And we don't really shy away, as an organization, from being, if not the first, amongst your earliest customers for the products. So all we insist is that there is an MVP already in place. The only reason being, because we are going to buy this products for 15 lakhs from the startup. So over a period of last 3 years, we have been able to facilitate 72 startups for public procurement, because we have had three editions of the Startup Week, the most recent one being in August 2020. And for reasons that are very obvious, it was a virtual event. Nevertheless, the event it went smooth, and so the way it works is we receive about 1,700 to 1,800 applications each year in the Startup Week from across India. And we have our screening partners who are very well-renowned names in the whole venture business, like Omidyar Network, Avishkar, Unlimited India, Bharat Innovation Fund, Acumen, so on and Social Alpha. So these partners help us drill down from 1,600 to arrive at the top 100. The top 100 are invited to pitch to sector-specific panelists. Each panel would ideally have about 6 to 8 members, and the mix is usually there's a senior startup founder, two startup founders, there are a couple of investors, there are a couple of government of senior bureaucrats from the relevant sector, and we also have some corporate. So that's broadly the mix of the panel. The reason to have the government officers on the panel is because end of the day, he or she is going to deploy them in that particular the winners of the startup week in their department. So it's always good to have a buy-in from the government officers. So while we are giving an opportunity to 24 startups pilot to have a paid pilot with the government of Maharashtra, the other way to look at it is, we are also bringing about innovation within the government by introducing 24 innovative products each year to various departments within the government of Maharashtra. Now, one question that we get very often is, why do you allow startups from outside of Maharashtra? Because if you look at it, most states in India, when they have initiatives like this, stick to kind of like to stick to startups from their respective geographies. But we felt, we need to go beyond just the state. And the reason is, why we are trying to bring about innovation within the government? Why should we limit why shouldn't the government of Maharashtra benefit from some innovation that's happening in Assam or Delhi or Bangalore or Chennai or wherever that is? So that's why we have been fairly liberal, and I must thank our leadership for supporting us on this so far. So it's been a great journey on the startup week, and like I told you, there have been instances where some startups that, although were not a part of the 24 winners, we have been able to connect them with various government departments, and they have gone on to get work orders from the government. Now, in an ideal scenario, what we expect is the startups get this work order, they do the pilot with various departments, and then they become eligible for larger procurements that happen within the department. So that's an overview about the Maharashtra Startup Week, which is our flagship event. The next so this is a annual event. The next one we are hoping to have somewhere in August this year. So keep an eye on the registrations that would probably, which we are hoping to open in May once we decide on the dates. Next slide, please. So this slide gives you an overview of the winners that we have had. I do not want to get into the individual names. So each year, 24 winners. So that makes it 72. 2018 is when we had the first one, and 2020 was the most recent one. So 72 innovative startups. All of them have been given work orders. Of course, I must also uh, um, state the fact that there are certain instances where we don't really, in spite of all the robust screening that we do, some startups don't end up being able to deliver the pilot. And as innovation society, the last thing that we need to shy away from is failure. So we should embrace failure and be open to it, because this is a high risk business that the entrepreneurs are into. So there are certain instances where the startup uh, is not able to deliver to what was promised, and the other instances where in spite of having a very strong panel, we don't really find a use case within the government. So this especially we had noticed in fintech, but otherwise I must say our success rate has been fairly good at around 75 to 80%. Next slide, please. These are some initiatives that a couple of them have already been launched. So the intellectual property support we had launched in Feb this year, and the idea is, so most of the support mechanisms that we have is for early stage startups. So I would say that's more or less our universe, because once you have attained a certain size, I think the best thing that we can do is be as non-interfering as possible in the business that you're in. So we felt, there's more we can do to absorb some amount of expense that startups incur at the early stage. So patent is one area where we thought we need to provide some support. So we are giving a grant of up to 2 lakhs for domestic patents. We are giving a grant of up to 10 lakhs for international patents. Now, this is not just a financial grant, but We are also making available quality attorneys. So there are about 6 partners that we have onboarded, and so we can not just give you a grant, but also be a be a partner during your entire course of patent filing. So that's on the patent front. And so while a lot of governments do have initiatives for patent and IP, we all went one step further, and we have a grant for product testing as well to encourage more product-based startups, because we felt this was a problem area and there was a lack of support for the early stage ecosystems. 2 lakhs for any kind of product testing or certification. It could be, a certification to launch your device into the market, or it could be, say, something like a CE certification that you might require. So we give up to 2 lakhs. So we launched both of these initiatives in Feb, and we are pleased to let you know that we have got over 250 applications, and a lot of them have already been disbursed as we speak. The next one is the virtual incubation center. While I did tell you about the the physical incubation center, we also felt the need to break down the whole need for a geographical location when it comes to incubation center, and also try and incubate startups at scale, which is why we conceptualized the MVIC. This is more of a work in progress. So we have a partner who's implementing, and the initial phase we would be piloting this with about 100 startups. Next slide. So in December 2020, like I told you, we felt the need to have increased focus to support women entrepreneurs. So we set up what we call as the WEC, Women Entrepreneurship Cell, within the Maharashtra State Innovation Society. One of the first steps in that direction was under the WEC was to see if we to set up the incubation center at SNDT Women's University. So that's a commitment of 5 crores that we have. Apart from this, we are engaging with a lot of corporates to see if we can have a women specific acceleration program or some kind of a boot camp where we create a community of women led businesses going forward. So that's on the WEC. The next initiative is something which we are very keen to launch, which is the Maharashtra Deep Tech Innovation Fund. So the focus, like the name says, would be on deep tech startups. So when we went around talking to a lot of people in the ecosystem, one area that we felt that we can genuinely support is, a lot of these senior researchers don't end up commercializing the work that they are doing, because there's a lack of stipend that is given to them apart from the other. So they're not, so they are fence sitters, not really taking the plunge. We thought, why not create a grant where a part of the money can be used as a stipend, so that their basic bills are taken care of, and rest of it can be used as a product development grant. So although the numbers are not finalized yet, what I'm quoting is purely indicative. So it would be around 25 lakhs approximately in outgo for each startup. We are looking to start or researchers. So we are looking to support 25 to 30 individuals or startups each year, and the outgo, like I said, about 8 to 10 lakhs would be for stipend, and the rest of it would be purely for product development grant. So we would be partnering with incubation centers across the state to to execute this program. And the underlying theme, like I said, is high risk deep tech businesses, and this is something which we are all looking forward to launch in the coming months. But quite clearly, this, even if you're an individual, we are fine to give you the grant, but you need to set up your own enterprise within the stipulated time frame, which would be 3 months or 6 months, as would be declared in the scheme. The next one is MIG, as we call it, Maharashtra Ignition Grant, where it's, I would say, the grant is smaller, but we want to go one step closer to college students or young graduates, and see if we can encourage them to advance their research or any kind of prototype they are working on. So here we are planning to give a grant of around 2 to 3 lakhs, since we are this is more focused at the college level, but the number of beneficiaries would be far higher. So we are looking at a tentative number of around 100 beneficiaries. Again, the numbers aren't finalized; these are purely indicative. I'm just giving you these numbers just to give you an overview of the underlying themes for both of these schemes. Next slide, please. Startup Yatra. So if you have been a part of this ecosystem, you may be also aware that 2018, the government of the Startup India team had a Startup Yatra that was organized across the country, and as a team, we felt that was a fabulous initiative. It helped us go deep into the state. Maharashtra has 36 districts, out of which close to 25 districts we had traveled to and organized boot camps, and we have over the period of 3 years seen the progress. The winners at the yatra have made, how they came with an idea or a prototype and now are running their own enterprises. So we felt as an organization we need to institutionalize or have something like a yatra on a year-on-year basis. So we have put forward our proposal to the government, and we are waiting for approvals. But this is again something that we are very gung-ho about going forward. Next, I'd like to spend a few minutes on the grand challenge that we are going to launch in May. Um, while in the startup week, we identified 24 innovative solutions, and then we take them to the government department to pilot them. In the grand challenge, we are trying to do the reverse. We go to the government departments, we source problem statements from them, and then we throw it open to the startup ecosystem to look for solutions. So the first one we are going to launch is with the Pollution Control Board, Government of Maharashtra, and I'm pleased to let you know that we have a commitment of around 8 to 9 crores from the Pollution Control Board to support various problem statements that they have given us. So the challenge we are hoping to launch sometime in May, like I told you, and we have partnered with very credible names like Social Alpha, Climate Collective, uh, and couple of other names to organize this grand challenge. Of course, Startup India also would be a very strong partner for us, as and when we launch this, given their network. So the idea here is to get a buy-in from the beneficiary department, get them to fund these innovative solutions that would solve problems for their respective departments. The other department where we are in fairly advanced stages to launch a grand challenge is the fisheries department from the government of Maharashtra. So that would be probably sometime in June. So these are two very. So what we are trying to do essentially is to involve more departments and not just make it a one department activity where just the innovation society. So we are being fortunate that there are a lot of such progressive departments that have come forward to provide such supporting mechanisms for innovative startups. Next slide. Okay, so that brings the closure of the presentation. So I hope I've been able to cover some of the major points that I wanted to. And so we have been doing these initiatives. They have been built over the last 3 years, and I must say I've been very fortunate to have a great team to be able to execute this set of initiatives with great support from the leadership that we have. So, Chahat, that's it from my side. So happy to take any questions that maybe from the audience.
Thank you so much, Mithun sir, for such an insightful presentation. And it's so heartening to see state has covered such leaps and bounds in last few years. And despite of so much stress on both the hard and soft infrastructure, the state's investment, the state's commitment towards the startup ecosystem has remained undeterred, and rather it has increased all the more in the last 1.5 years. So many compliments to you and your team and to the leadership. And just before this session, we were actually interacting this only that it's the motivation and enthusiasm of the leadership which is keeping us all on toes and motivating us to stay on the job and do work beyond the call of duty. So many
That's right.
compliments to that. So we just have a couple of questions, and I'm sure there might be many achievements of the state's ecosystem. But in particular, what do you think, sir, that for the state, what has been the most notable achievement for the Maharashtra state startup ecosystem in the last 5 years?
Well, okay, I'm considering 2 or 3 years because we have been around for 3 years. I would say, public procurement has been a serious issue, not just in Maharashtra but across the country. But Startup Week was a platform that we created where 24 startups each year get that opportunity to work with the government of Maharashtra in various sectors. And we have had three editions so far, which means the model is working. And a lot of startups, 72 startups, have been benefited by this. So I would say that's something which we are, of course, ideally we would want much larger procurements to happen, but at least from a perspective of getting a foot in the door, I think Startup Week has been phenomenal for us. And not too many states have an event around the public procurement. So I think that's something that which we are happy about as a team. Although we definitely can go better in terms of the number of startups that end up getting the pilot. We are currently at about 75 to 80%. So we are definitely looking forward to increase the success ratio there.
No, definitely. And the state's vision and the openness to collaborate with startups and to bring in necessary reforms in public procurement has definitely been noteworthy. And one such great collaboration I think you've had with Act Grants also, wherein
Yeah,
the state has been working very closely from over 1 year now, in
that's
ensuring
right.
that startups
Yeah.
do play a critical role in helping the state combat this
Yeah,
pandemic.
in fact, I should use this platform to speak about ACT because they've been doing some phenomenal work. So, ACT, in case for the members on the call who are not aware, so ACT was started when the pandemic broke down last year. So, it's a not for profit initiative started by India's leading VCs and startup founders. It's a 100 crore grant fund that has been put in place. And the idea is to see how innovative healthcare startups can complement efforts of various state governments to fight COVID. So we have been actively engaging with the team, and they have been of phenomenal support. So the team in Maharashtra is led by Sandeep Singhal of Nexus Ventures Partners, and I must say, we have had, it's been a classic case of how public and private partnerships can do a phenomenal contribution to the society. So yeah, it's been a great experience for us to execute projects with ACT.
Great, sir. One last question we have for you is that what you think has been a unique initiative which probably no other state has really tried and tested and which has worked really well for Maharashtra?
Well, the fact that we have team focused venture funds, so we are probably one of the only states that has a defense and aerospace focused fund. So I think they have already deployed about 70 to 80 crores into about seven or about 8 to 10 startups already, and they want to make the fund much larger than what it is today. So that's quite unique. Apart from that, we have two other funds. So in total, we have three funds that are already existing, focusing on early stage startups. And there's a fourth one that we are intending to launch later part of this year. So that I'm sure stands up when it comes to the overall state-wise ecosystem. And the fact that we have a dedicated team to look after fintech. So we are probably amongst the earliest state, if not the only state, to have a dedicated fintech policy and a team just to focus on fintech as an ecosystem. So I'm sure these are two key aspects where we really stand out. I don't want to venture into the startup week because I've spoken enough about it already. Yeah,
Thank you so much, sir. And it's been just phenomenal to always hear from you, to interact with you. And it's always good to know different strides the ecosystem is taking and with all the efforts of the leadership and your extremely able team. And each one of members of your team is so much enthusiastic and so energetic. It's always a pleasure to work closely
sure,
with them and ensure that the larger objectives of the nation are
true.
well implemented in the state on ground.
Sure.
So,
And it's been possible with support from people like you, be it Himanshu or the team and Agni. So I think it's good teamwork, I would say, between and even between the states. It's there's a lot of collaborative effort. We speak to our colleagues very often in Telangana, Gujarat, Karnataka, Kerala, so on and so forth, Punjab. very recently we had a call with them, I think a week ago. So yeah, it's great collaborative work that happens. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's what probably our ecosystem has also evolved to, and together now we are all working in such a closely knit, more of a family structure,
true.
that ultimately with one common objective of making India a global startup hub, all of us are doing such exciting work in our respective domains with our respective expertise. It's all very heartening to know, especially for all of us who are on the administrative side and who have been part of this whole startup journey from years. And I think this is probably the best time to be a startup. So definitely, it was a privilege to have you today, sir. And I would request all of our friends to feel free to reach out to us or Matan sir for any queries they may have. And I'm sure that
Yeah,
MSINS is
in fact, I can leave my email address behind in case anyone wants to reach out. It is my first name, Mithun, Mithun, at msins.in. So any queries you may have, feel free to reach out.
perfect, sir. Thank you so much for sharing this with all of us.
Yeah.
And we are again once we are very thankful to you for your precious time out and for such exciting presentation. With this, we wrap up our today's session of State Startup Ecosystem Showcase series, and we'll be coming back with more such sessions. And we look forward to participation of all such viewers. We hope that everyone is keeping safe, keeping healthy. Please wear masks, stay sanitized, stay at home, and we hope for the good times to be back very soon. And once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to catching up with all of you again shortly. Thank you so much. Stay healthy.
Thanks, Shahad. It was great to be a part of this. Take care, everyone.